भएको छ। स्थायित्वका साथ राजनीतिक स्थायित्व कायम गर्दै देशलाई महाअभियानमा यो महाअभियानमा सरकारलाई साथ दिनु राजनीतिक दलहरूको पनि कर्तव्य हो नि मलाई लाग्दछ मलाई लाग्दछ यस अर्थमा सामान्य सभामा खोज्यो नेपाली कांग्रेसको यो प्रतिक्रियाका कारणहरू हामीले महसुस गर्न सक्छौं। किन कांग्रेसलाई एक ढंगले प्रकट भएको छ भन्ने कुरा प्रकट भएको छ अनुमान हामीले फेरि पनि भन्न चाहन्छु समस्याको समाधान होइन लानका लागि अगाडि नै सुविचारित कदम चाल्नु पर्दछ भन्ने मलाई लाग्छ। प्रकट होइन संवैधानिक प्रबन्ध अन्तर्गत अगाडि बढाउनका निम्ति नेपाली कांग्रेस जस्तो जेठो लोकतन्त्री पार्टी दाबी गर्ने पार्टी नेताहरूले पनि भूमिकामा पुनर्विचार गर्नुहुनेछ भनेर अनुरोध पनि गर्न चाहन्छु। संविधानको व्यवस्था अन्तर्गत संविधानले दिएको अधिकार निर्धारण गरेको कर्तव्य सम्मान्य प्रधानमन्त्रीले विश्वास लिनका निम्ति अग्रसर हुनुभएको छ। सदनको विश्वास मत लिने प्रक्रियालाई समेत पनि अवरोध गरेर कस्तो प्रकारको लोकतन्त्रको अभ्यास गरेको छ। एउटा प्रधानमन्त्रीले जनताबाट निर्वाचित भएको प्रधानमन्त्रीले मत लिएर विश्वासको मत लिएर विश्वासमा प्रतीक्षा गरेर पुनर्पुष्टि गर्नखेरिमा पनि सदन अवरोध गर्ने लोकतन्त्रको अभ्यास यस प्रकारको पचकना कामका लागि आग्रह गर्न पनि यो पनि नेपाली कांग्रेसका यो आग्रह गर्न चाहन्छु नारा लगाउनुभएको छ कसरी तर तपाईले अघिल्लो पनि यस्तै खालको सिनारियो थियो पार्लियामेन्टको दृश्य थियो यस्तै खालको दृश्य थियो। तपाईहरुले सम्मान्य प्रधानमन्त्रीज्यूलाई दिएर विश्वासको मत लिएर संस्कार प्रदर्शित गर्नुभएको थियो। कम्तीमा यसपटक पनि आफैले प्रदर्शित गरेको अभ्यासको अनुसरण गर्नका लागि नेपालीको लागि नेपालीमा आग्रह गर्न चाहन्छु। नेपाली कांग्रेस लगायत सबै प्रतिपक्षी दलहरू र राजनीतिक दलहरूलाई सम्मान्य प्रधानमन्त्री प्रचण्डज्यूलाई विश्वासको मत दिएर लोकतन्त्रको सबलीकरण समृद्धिको महाअभियानमा हार्दिक आग्रह गर्न चाहन्छु। सम्मान्य प्रधानमन्त्री पुष्पकमल दाजुलाई बधाई भन्न चाहन्छु। हिजो मैले अझ फराकिलो आधारमा प्राप्त गर्नुहुन्छ सम्मान्य प्रधानमन्त्रीज्यू कदमका साथमा अगाडि बढ्नु होला तपाईलाई राष्ट्रको साथ दिनेछ नेपालीले यो प्रतिनिधिसभाले गरेको यो सरकारले पुरा गर्नेछ कार्यकाल पुरा गर्नेछ। यही विश्वासका साथ एमाले लगायत नेकपा एमाले लगायत सरकारमा सहभागी भएका विश्वासको मत प्रदान गरिने अनुरोध गर्दै विपक्ष नेपाली कांग्रेस लगायतका साथीलाई पनि पक्षमा मतदान गर्नका निम्ति धन्यवाद नमस्कार।
माननीय सदस्यहरू, अब म सम्माननीय प्रधानमन्त्री पुष्पकमल दाहाल प्रचण्डलाई छलफलको क्रममा उठेका प्रश्नहरूको जवाब दिन अनुमति दिन्छु। माननीय सदस्यहरू, आसन ग्रहण गरेर सम्माननीय प्रधानमन्त्रीज्यूको जवाब सुन्ने एउटा वातावरण बनाइदिनु हुन म माननीय सदस्यहरूलाई अनुरोध गर्दछु।
सम्माननीय सभामुख महोदय, म छलफलको क्रममा उठेका प्रश्नको जवाब दिनको लागि उपस्थित भएको छु। म अवरोधमा रहेका मान्य सदस्यहरूलाई, खास गरी नेपाली कङ्ग्रेसका सबै मान्य सदस्यहरूलाई भन्न चाहन्छु, तपाईहरूले आज बहुत गलत गर्नुभयो भन्ने मलाई लागेको छ। तपाईहरूले नेपालको इतिहासमा जुन प्रधानमन्त्रीले तपाईहरूलाई पटक पटक साथ दियो र यो पटक पनि जुन प्रधानमन्त्रीले तपाईहरूलाई संवाद र सहमतिको बाटोमा ल्याउन मेहनत गरेको छ, त्यसलाई संविधान अनुसार विश्वासको मत लिन नदिएर तपाईहरूले इतिहासमा एउटा नराम्रो उदाहरण प्रस्तुत गर्नुभयो। म त्यसको निम्ति गहिरो दुःख व्यक्त गर्न चाहन्छु र तपाईहरू नेपाली कङ्ग्रेसको लागि धेरै मूल्य चर्को पर्नेछ। आजको तपाईहरूको यो गतिविधि नेपालको इतिहासमा राम्रैसँग स्थापित हुनेछ कलङ्कको रूपमा। म यो कुरा भन्न चाहन्छु र मेरो विश्वासको मतको पक्षमा समर्थन गर्ने नेकपा एमालेका मान्य सदस्य विष्णु पौडेल लगायत सबै संसदीय दल, सबै मान्य सदस्यहरूलाई हार्दिक धन्यवाद भन्दै म मेरो भनाइ टुङ्ग्याउँछु। धन्यवाद, अभिवादन।
माननीय सदस्यहरू, सम्मानीय प्रधानमन्त्री पुष्पकमल दाहाल प्रचण्डले नेपालको संविधानको धारा 100 को उपधारा 2 बमोजिम प्रतिनिधि सभाबाट विश्वासको मत प्राप्त गर्न प्रतिनिधि सभा नियमावली 2079 को नियम 155 को उपनियम 4 बमोजिम राख्नुभएको प्रस्तावलाई निर्णयार्थ प्रस्तुत गर्दा सोही नियमको उपनियम 7 बमोजिम सदस्यको दरखास्त सहितको मत विभाजन, दस्ताखत सहितको मत विभाजन द्वारा मत सङ्कलन गरिने बेहोरा मान्य सदस्यहरूलाई जानकारी गराउँछु। मान्य सदस्यहरू, अब म मत विभाजन गर्दा अपनाइने प्रक्रियाको सम्बन्धमा जानकारी गराउँछु। 1. विभाजन गर्नु अघि सभाकक्ष बाहिर रहनुभएका मान्य सदस्यहरूलाई सभाकक्षमा प्रवेश गर्ने मौका दिन 5 मिनेटसम्म विभाजन घण्टी बजाइनेछ। 2. विभाजन घण्टी बजेपछि सभा भवन बाहिर रहनुभएका मान्य सदस्यहरू सभाकक्षभित्र प्रवेश गर्नुपर्नेछ। 3. विभाजन घण्टी बन्द गरेपछि सभामुख आसनको दायाँ र बायाँ तर्फको उपकक्ष, लबी र सभामुख आसन पछाडिको उपकक्ष खाली गराइनेछ। 4. सभामुख आसनको दायाँतर्फ रहेको उपकक्ष, लबीतर्फ प्रवेश गर्ने सम्पूर्ण ढोकाहरू, सभामुख आसनको बायाँतर्फ रहेको उपकक्ष, लबीतर्फ प्रवेश गर्ने सम्पूर्ण ढोकाहरू र सभा भवन पस्ने पश्चिमतर्फको फलामे ढोका, उत्तरतर्फको ढोका र दक्षिणतर्फको मूल ढोका बन्द गरिनेछन्। 5. उल्लेखित ढोकाहरू बन्द गरिसकेपछि मत सङ्कलन कार्य सम्पन्न नहुन्जेलसम्म बाहिर रहेका मान्य सदस्यहरू लगायत कसैलाई पनि सभाकक्षभित्र प्रवेश गर्न र बाहिर जान दिइने छैन। 6. सभामुख आसनको दायाँ र बायाँतर्फ रहेका उपकक्ष, लबी एवं सभामुख आसनको पछाडि रहेको उपकक्षमा मान्य सदस्यहरूको वर्णनक्रम अनुसारको नामावली राखिएका छन्। 7. प्रस्तावको पक्षमा रहनुहुने मान्य सदस्यहरू अर्थात् हुन्छ भन्ने पक्षका मान्य सदस्यहरू सभामुख आसनको दायाँतर्फ रहेको उपकक्ष, लबीमा प्रवेश गरी त्यहाँ राखिएको वर्णानुक्रम अनुसारको आफ्नो नामावलीको दस्ताखत महलमा दस्ताखत गर्नुपर्नेछ। ख. प्रस्तावको विपक्षमा रहनुहुने मान्य सदस्य अर्थात् हुन्न भन्ने पक्षका मान्य सदस्यहरू सभामुख आसनको बायाँतर्फ रहेको उपकक्ष, लबीमा प्रवेश गरी त्यहाँ राखिएको वर्णानुक्रम अनुसारको आफ्नो नामावलीको दस्ताखत महलमा दस्ताखत गर्नुपर्नेछ। ग प्रस्तावको पक्ष वा विपक्षमा मत प्रकट नगरी तटस्थ रहनुहुने मान्य सदस्यहरू अर्थात् मत दिन्न भन्ने पक्षका मान्य सदस्यहरू सभामुख आसनको पछाडि रहेको उपकक्ष लबीमा प्रवेश गरी त्यहाँ राखिएको वर्णानुक्रम अनुसारको आफ्नो नामावलीको दस्ताखत महलमा दस्ताखत गर्नुपर्नेछ। मान्य सदस्यहरू आसन ग्रहण गरेर मतदानको वातावरण बनाइदिनु हुन म फेरि मान्य सदस्यहरूलाई अनुरोध गर्दछु। मान्य सदस्यहरू, हामी एउटा विधि प्रक्रिया अन्तर्गत संवैधानिक हामीले तयारी गरेको व्यवस्था अन्तर्गत नै यो कार्यक्रमहरू गर्न गइरहेका छौँ। मान्यजीहरूको विरोध पनि जारी रहेको हामीले सुनिसकेका छौँ। अब हामी यो प्रक्रियामा जानको लागि सहजीकरण गरिदिने आफ्नो विश्वासको आधारमा मतदान गरेर वातावरण बनाइदिनु हुनको लागि म मान्यहरूलाई हार्दिक अनुरोध गर्दछु। मान्य सदस्यहरू, मत विभाजन व्यवस्थापन कार्यमा सचिवालयका कर्मचारीहरूले सहयोग गर्नुहुनेछ। त्यसैगरी कुनै पनि मान्य सदस्यहरूले आफ्नो मत सच्याउन चाहेमा मतदान कार्य सकिएको 3 मिनेटभित्र माग गरेमा सच्याउन दिइनेछ। मतदान प्रक्रियामा आवश्यक सम्पूर्ण सहजीकरण गर्नको लागि मर्यादा पालकहरूलाई म निर्देश गर्दछु। मान्य सदस्यहरू, अब 5 मिनेट विभाजन घन्टी बजाउन म आदेश दिन्छु। अब म सभामुख आसनको दायाँतर्फ रहेको उपकक्ष लबीतर्फ प्रवेश गर्ने सम्पूर्ण ढोकाहरू, सभामुख आसनको बायाँतर्फ रहेको उपकक्ष लबीतर्फ प्रवेश गर्ने सम्पूर्ण ढोकाहरू र सभा भवन पस्ने पश्चिमतर्फको फलामे ढोका, उत्तरतर्फको ढोका र दक्षिणतर्फको मूल ढोका बन्द गर्न आदेश दिन्छु। मान्य सदस्यहरू, अब म सम्माननीय प्रधानमन्त्री पुष्पकमल दाहाल प्रचण्डले नेपालको संविधानको धारा 100 को उपधारा 2 बमोजिम प्रतिनिधि सभाबाट विश्वासको मत प्राप्त गर्न राख्नुभएको प्रस्तावलाई निर्णयार्थ प्रस्तुत गर्दछु। मान्य सदस्यहरू, यस प्रस्तावको पक्षमा अर्थात् हुन्छ भन्ने पक्षमा रहनुहुने मान्य सदस्यहरू सभामुख आसनको दायाँतर्फ रहेको उपकक्ष लबीमा प्रवेश गरी त्यहाँ राखिएको वर्णानुक्रम अनुसारको आफ्नो नामावलीको दस्ताखत महलमा दस्ताखत गर्नुहोला। प्रस्तावको विपक्षमा अर्थात् हुन्न भन्ने पक्षमा रहनुहुने मान्य सदस्यहरू सभामुख आसनको बायाँतर्फ रहेको उपकक्ष लबीमा प्रवेश गरी त्यहाँ राखिएको वर्णानुक्रम अनुसारको आफ्नो नामावलीको दस्ताखत महलमा दस्ताखत गर्नुहोला र प्रस्तावको पक्ष वा विपक्षमा नरही मत दिन्न भन्ने पक्षमा रहनुहुने मान्य सदस्यहरू सभामुख आसनको पछाडि रहेको उपकक्ष लबीमा प्रवेश गरी त्यहाँ राखिएको वर्णानुक्रम अनुसारको आफ्नो नामावलीको दस्ताखत महलमा दस्ताखत गर्नुहोला। मान्य सदस्यहरू, प्रस्तावको पक्षमा अर्थात् हुन्छ भन्ने पक्षमा रहनुहुने मान्य सदस्यहरू सभामुख आसनको बायाँतर्फ रहेको उपकक्ष लबीमा प्रवेश गरी त्यहाँ राखिएको वर्णानुक्रम अनुसारको आफ्नो नामावलीको दस्ताखत महलमा दस्ताखत गर्नुहोस्। ख। मान्य सदस्यहरू, प्रस्तावको विपक्षमा अर्थात् हुन्न भन्ने पक्षमा रहनुहुने मान्य सदस्यहरू सभामुख आसनको बायाँतर्फ रहेको उपकक्ष लबीमा प्रवेश गरी त्यहाँ राखिएको वर्णानुक्रम अनुसारको आफ्नो नामावलीको दस्ताखत महलमा दस्ताखत गर्नुहोस्। मान्य सदस्यहरू, प्रस्तावको पक्ष वा विपक्षमा मत प्रकट नगरी तटस्थ रहनुहुने मान्य सदस्यहरू अर्थात् मत दिन्न भन्ने पक्षमा रहनुहुने मान्य सदस्यहरू सभामुख आसनको पछाडि रहेको उपकक्ष लबीमा प्रवेश गरी त्यहाँ राखिएको वर्णानुक्रम अनुसारको आफ्नो नामावलीको दस्ताखत महलमा दस्ताखत गर्नुहोस्। मान्य सदस्यहरू, तपाईहरूमध्ये कसैले आफ्नो मत सच्याउन चाहनुहुन्छ भने मत सच्याउनको लागि 3 मिनेटको समय दिन्छु। सो समयभित्र डायसमा आई आफ्नो मत सच्याउन सक्नुहुनेछ। अब बन्द गरिएका सभाका सबै प्रवेशद्वारहरू खोल्न आदेश दिन्छु। मान्य सदस्यहरू, अब म मत विभाजनको परिणाम घोषणा गर्दछु। मान्य सदस्यहरू, आजको मतदानमा उपस्थित मान्य सदस्यहरूको सङ्ख्या 158 रहेको छ। मान्य सदस्यहरू, सम्माननीय प्रधानमन्त्री पुष्पकमल दाहाल प्रचण्डले नेपालको संविधानको धारा 100 को उपधारा 2 बमोजिम प्रतिनिधि सभाबाट विश्वासको मत प्राप्त गर्न राख्नु भएको प्रस्तावको पक्षमा अर्थात् हुन्छ भन्ने पक्षमा जम्मा 157 मत, प्रस्तावको विपक्षमा अर्थात् हुन्न भन्ने पक्षमा जम्मा 0 मत प्राप्त र प्रस्तावको मत दिन्न भन्ने पक्षमा जम्मा 1 मत परेको छ। मान्य सदस्यहरू, सम्मानीय प्रधानमन्त्री पुष्पकमल दाहाल प्रचण्डले नेपालको संविधानको धारा 100 को उपधारा 2 बमोजिम प्रतिनिधि सभाबाट विश्वासको मत प्राप्त गर्न राख्नुभएको प्रस्तावको पक्षमा 157 मत परेको र उक्त सङ्ख्या प्रतिनिधि सभामा तत्काल कायम रहेको सम्पूर्ण सदस्य सङ्ख्याको बहुमत भएकोले सम्माननीय प्रधानमन्त्री पुष्पकमल दाहाल प्रचण्डले प्रतिनिधि सभाबाट विश्वासको मत प्राप्त गर्न राख्नुभएको प्रस्ताव बहुमतले पारित भएको घोषणा गर्दछु। मान्य सदस्यहरू, आजको कार्यसूचीमा रहेको बाँकी कार्यक्रमहरू सूचीबाट हटाइएको बेहोरा जानकारी गराउँछु। मान्य सदस्यहरू, अब अर्को बैठक 2081 साल जेठ 8 गते मङ्गलबार बिहान 11 बजे बस्ने गरी यो बैठक स्थगित हुन्छ।
everyone, I welcome you all to the live session on React.js full course by Livep. This session is conducted by multiple experts who will be teaching you all about React.js from basic to advanced level. In this session, we have also covered hands-on demo, projects and also interview questions and answers. But before we begin the session, make sure to subscribe to our channel and also hit on the bell icon so that you will never miss an update from us. Begin with introduction to React.js. Then after that, we will explain you about DOM and virtual DOM. Then later on, we will see the difference between class, functions and components. Once we finish that, we will teach you about React hooks and also do a quick hands-on on how to build custom hooks. Post that, we will be learning about React.js Bootstrap. Once we finish that, we will be doing hands-on demo on creating class components and function components. Once we finish all the hands-on demo, we will be telling you the difference between AngularJS and React.js. Post that, we will be learning about how to become React.js developer. Then finally, we will be covering React.js interview questions and answers. So, this is the agenda of the video. This video is going to be very interesting, so stay tuned and watch the video till the end. Now, let's begin the session.
What is React.js? We'll try and demystify what React.js is and why is it important for us to understand what it actually means. Why React.js is so popular is something we'll take a look at afterwards, but firstly we'll have to understand what React.js is all about. So React.js is a UI library. UI stands for user interface. So it's a user interface library that allows developers to build small self-contained UI components which can be used to build a user interface. So whenever you take a look at your user interface of any application, whether it's a web application, mobile application, desktop application, you will see that it's built using some components. These components are repeated all over the platforms. So even on an Android mobile, these components may be repeated. So the components could be a button, it could be a text field, an editable text field, a table view, it could be an image carousel in which you can take a look at all the images that are available by swiping on them or clicking on the arrow buttons. It could also be some image gallery and all of that. And many of these components are built by grouping together smaller components. So a good example of this is a form. A form which is used to collect users information is built by grouping smaller components together. Components such as text field, input field, submit button, and labels and things like that. So React.js allows us to write JavaScript code that allows us to build these components. These components can then be arranged in a hierarchy structure in which we define where does a particular component go declaratively, and using that we can build up the entire user interface. The user interface built using React.js is built completely using JavaScript. So we don't have to understand and define how you can use these components. We just need to define what these components look like, what their styles is going to be, and how they are going to interact with the events that the user dispatches. So when the user clicks on a particular component, what should happen and should something happen or not, things like that. So React allows developers to write really declarative code in JavaScript to efficiently assemble together a user interface. So thing is that what React allows us to do is that it allows us to declare our user interface rather than imperatively dispatching commands that lets the browser know how to piece together the user interface. So React allows us to just declare, okay, I need a button, I need inside the button I need some text, and the text should be this, instead of us having to create a button from scratch and then assigning some text to the text field and stuff like that. If you have dealt with the old school DOM manipulation way, which we'll cover in a few moments, is how it works in DOM generally is you have to create these components or elements yourself. Then you have to edit their attributes and you have to add the children attributes. Once you've done all of that, you have to assemble them together in a tree-like structure, which is the DOM tree or document object model tree, in which you have all the child components and parent components efficiently rendered together. So you have to create like a form. Inside a form, you have to attach all the text fields and labels. You have to associate labels with the text fields. You have the input fields. You have to associate types with them. So for instance, some input fields can have passwords. Some input fields can have email. Some input fields can have numbers in a particular range, and so on and so forth. So that's how we're supposed to do that. Keeping that in mind, when we declare our code using React.js, it feels like we're writing HTML, but that's not what we're doing, which we'll cover in a later segment. But that was one of the major controversies with React when it released. So if you've seen some code in React, you can see it as being written HTML with CSS and JavaScript, which is not exactly how it's supposed to. So we'll cover that as well. So it allows us to create user interfaces using just JavaScript and writing the user interface code very declaratively. We do have to create the markup for our components so that our components understand what is it we're trying to display, fancy button or something like that. Also, React.js is maintained by Facebook and were released in 2013. Sorry. So as you can see, React.js has been out for quite a while, and there have been some massive advancements in the development of React. Currently, React.js is in its 16th version and 17th version is being released. React.js is by far one of the most popular user interface libraries. It has overtaken Angular and Vue in popularity and in job requirements as well. React.js is very popular because it's very simple. It's very easy to understand and it's very easy to learn and use as well. Now, when I say easy, I don't necessarily mean simple. There is a sufficient mental model shift that you need to understand. If you worked with the old school way of creating DOM elements and then updating those DOM elements and then inserting the data, that is going to be difficult in this scenario. So we'll have to take a look at that. But overall, it works fine. So in conclusion, what React.js is that it's a user interface library that allows us to build user interfaces by declaratively writing JavaScript code. The JavaScript code is maintained by React. So if any changes happen to the thing that we have rendered, all the components, React will take care of assembling those components, re-rendering the changes, and making sure everything is done as efficiently as possible. If React was not there, then we would have to write the code to figure out what are the things that we have to change. And once we do change, then we have to display it to the user, and that's about it. And that's how it's supposed to work. And now let's take a look at what else we have. What is DOM? We have been talking a lot about DOM and how React.js keeps everything in sync with the DOM, but we'll try and understand what DOM actually means. DOM stands for Document Object Model, and it's the tree structure of our HTML components, but we'll try and get a bit deeper into it. So DOM actually stands for Document Object Model. That I think we all knew. It is a tree-like structure that is used to represent the structure of all the elements of an HTML document. So when we create an HTML document with all the markup, the tags, the attributes, and all of that, it creates a tree-like structure in which HTML tag is at the top. Then we have the body tag, which is its child node. Then we have the head tag, which is also the child node of HTML tag, and it has a lot of information about the content of our website, such as the SEO related stuff, the style sheets, and so on. So these are all arranged in a tree structure. Now, why in a tree structure? Because it makes it very easy for us to navigate from the top of our HTML tag to the particular element that we're interested in, and we can manipulate it in Java. We can manipulate it by getting a reference to it. We can manipulate it by, after getting a reference to it, we can manipulate it by changing its attributes, its content, its type. There could be a number of things that we can do. And that allows us to manipulate it on the fly. So when we click a button and we want to make some changes to our page's HTML content, we can do it using manipulating the DOM. So DOM creates a hierarchical structure. As a tree structure is a hierarchical structure, that we have parent and child and sibling and grandparent and all that. And in that, what it does is that DOM can be used by programming languages like JavaScript to interact and manipulate. Now, it can be used by JavaScript, but that's not the only language that can use it. For instance, if you're into web scraping, then you can take a look at Python, Beautiful Soup, and they also understand the document object model. And you can just traverse the structure of the tree once you understand the structure. And with that structure, you can pinpoint to the content that you want to manipulate or save, and you can do that. Now, DOM is a standard interface for interacting with web pages using programming or scripting languages. So it's not that DOM is something that people haven't used yet. People use DOM all the time, and it's a standard programming interface. So anyone who interacts with the web page, who tries to get data from a web page, converts the HTML string into the DOM structure and then manipulates it the way they want to. The reason why JavaScript does it is because it's exactly the kind of thing that it was built to do. JavaScript was created so that it can manipulate and add functionality to web pages. As times grew, though, JavaScript's reach of what it could do became even more, and now JavaScript can do a whole lot more than just manipulate the DOM. But it's still one of its major features and one of the major reasons why we use DOM, right? So now let's take a look at what else we have to do. Now let's take a look at React DOM. We've taken a look at what DOM is, but when we're working with React in the browser, we need to also work with React DOM, which is one of the libraries that React uses underneath the hood. Let's take a look at what it is and why do we need to use it. So React is a user interface library, but it's built with the purpose of building user interfaces. It's not limited to web. It could also be extended to be used on mobile applications or virtual reality applications such as React VR or React Native, not in that order. But you can use React to build applications for the web, for the mobile platform, which could be cross-platform such as Android and iOS. And you can also use it to build applications for virtual reality apps. Now, that being said, how can you build such applications for such different platforms when you have a single library? Well, the answer is that they have separated the essential parts from the variable parts. So when we're using it on the web, that is when we're using it to build the front end of the web application that we are going to be building, then it needs to interact with the DOM. To make that interaction easy and make that integration seamless, we use React DOM. So what React DOM will do, it will take a look at our component tree and it will take care of converting that component tree into DOM elements and keep track of managing that component. So we can create the components using React, and then when it comes to integrating our components with the actual web DOM, we can basically just use React DOM and it will take care of it all for us. That's what React DOM actually is. React DOM is nothing more than just a library. Now, it's basically just a package that contains DOM specific methods used by React to enable itself to interact with the DOM. So if you're using React and you want to build applications for the web, then you use React DOM. Other libraries such as React Native and React VR have their own bridging system, so you don't have to worry about that at all. All you have to worry about is how you can build user interfaces using DOM or React DOM in that specific scenario. So all React DOM does is that it bridges the gap between the React user interface library and the web DOM platform. So if you want to build React applications by creating components that can then be translated into DOM elements and managed by React, we use React DOM specifically for that purpose. Now let's take a look at UI without React.js. So when you're building user interface without React.js, what are the kinds of things that you need to tackle? The first thing is decomposition. So we can quite easily build user interfaces without React.js. So if you want to build a user interface without React.js, you can do it. Especially for smaller applications, it's also a recommended way that you go without React.js. But for any reasonably sized application, it involves some really difficult challenges. One of those challenges is decomposition. So when you're using React.js, we can create small isolated individual components which can then be composed together to create the entire user interface. So if you have a user interface that you want to create using React.js, you can do so. But without React.js, creating smaller components, combining which you can create a larger user interface can be really difficult. Whereas with React.js, decomposition is really easy. So that's why React.js is much more preferred over other component libraries. So without React.js, we would need to create the HTML tags, then use the JavaScript to add event handling code and wire everything up. So without React.js, what we do in plain JavaScript is firstly we create the HTML code for our user interface, style it using CSS. Then we get a handle to each of the components that we're interested in, such as if we are interested in knowing when a button is clicked and all of that. We get those user interface elements, and then we add some user interface elements, add some event handling code to it. So if we have a button that we want to respond to when it's clicked on, what we can do is we can just create an on-click handler which will run when the button is clicked on. Now the browser takes care of it all. When the user clicks on the button, the event code that we have associated with the event handling code will run. This is quite easy in theory, but in practice it's really difficult because when we have multiple user interface elements and their interaction needs to be configured simultaneously, separating these concerns can be really difficult. How do you separate the event handling code of a button from an event handling code of another button, which are two different buttons, such as the submit and the reset buttons of a form? So that could be really difficult. And when that difficulty is something that we need to manage on medium to large size applications, it could be really difficult as well. So that is why decomposition comes into play, where we can just create self-contained isolated components, and those components will take care of their own logic. They don't need to worry about how other components are working, and we don't have to go through the entire DOM hunting for each element and then assigning the behavior that needs to happen when the user clicks on a button or some other aspect of the application happens. Then comes state management. State management is one of the most important aspects in any application, not just front-end applications. But it is especially important when we are dealing with front-end applications or applications that the users can see. The reason being that state refers to the data that our application stores in the memory. So that data can be used to display things later. For instance, when we are building a chat application, the messages that you have sent so far and the messages that you are going to send right now that you have typed into the chat box, all of these are part of the state of the application. This is managed by your application, and now your application needs to take that data, save it to the database, send it to the user. The user needs to be able to see it. When the user sees it, that notification needs to be sent out to all the other users who are associated with the messages as well, and that could be a really complicated task. With that in mind, what we can do as developers is we need to firstly understand how to use state. So state management is really difficult, mainly because if you have an application that has some data that is useful for one component and some data that's useful for other component, and then there's some data that needs to be shared between those components, that is really difficult because now we have to figure out where to put that data so that it can be easily shared by child components and so on. So that's really difficult, especially in an event-driven design such as the one that we saw earlier with plain JavaScript and HTML. Because if you're doing things like this, then what's going to happen is we're going to be able to just do state management. We're going to be able to do state management based on user interfaces event system. So when we get a click, then we are going to update something. When we're going to make some changes to the state. But all the data that we need is going to be stored eventually in a larger global context, in a global object. All the variables that live on a global object, that's going to be really difficult to manage because some part of our application not knows what are the different names of the variables that are saving the information that we need, will end up overriding those variables, and all the other parts of our application will start breaking, and that will be really difficult for us to figure out how that is happening. So that's why state management is really important. Now sometimes when data is being displayed, it gets changed or updated. So if you have data, let's say you have chat application, the data that you have is all the messages that you have so far when you load the application, and new data will be when the user sends a new message, updates previous messages if they have the ability to do so, and so on and so forth. So the total price that is shown on a shopping cart when another item is added also changes the total price of the entire cart. So when you add new elements, the total price needs to change as well, and many different aspects of the application need to update the data, and that is all very difficult. So this is where state management comes into play, where we can specify local state. Local state basically means just the piece of information that only one of our components is interested in, and they only need to know. So for instance, if we have an application that fetches data from the external web APIs and displays images, well, the individual components are only responsible for fetching data from each of the user interface elements and getting the images from the web server and then displaying it into the user interface element. So this is why state management is important, and simpler user interfaces without React.js, managing state, defining local state so that if we define some other state variable with the same name doesn't get overridden, can be really complicated, which is why we use React.js instead of plain user interface without React. Now, React takes care of keeping all the data and the display in sync with each other. So if the data is changed, all components being displayed are updated automatically. So if you are not using React, then you have to take care of where all the state that we are using is being referenced, and then we need to update it one by one, and that could be difficult. So adding and removing elements from a DOM tree is very performance intensive task. Now, this is what causes a lot of performance hit in a lot of our applications that we build. Whenever we add and remove or completely delete the entire DOM tree structure and then rebuild all the components that haven't even changed, that could be difficult. Unless we are very smart about it and we keep a track of what is being rendered. If that is the case, then it's not really difficult. So in situations like this, we end up using React.js because it gives us a massive performance boost. What React does is that it takes care of rendering the user interface